Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Sharlee Dixon, and today I'm joined by Shell Mendelson. Shell is a career coach and entrepreneur with a deep passion for helping neurodivergent individuals, especially those with ADHD, find work that brings fulfillment and joy. With a background in counseling and over 30 years of experience, Shell has worked with hundreds of clients, guiding them towards careers aligned with interests that energize and inspire, utilizing their skills and unique needs. Having experienced her own career journey, including founding a successful international business, Shell understands the importance of creating work-life options that resonate with one's true self. Her mission is to empower adults with ADHD to make career choices that reflect their authentic selves, leading to lasting success and happiness. We're excited to welcome Shell to discuss her unique approach to helping clients find fulfillment in their careers, overcoming common challenges, building confidence, and creating a personalized career path through self-reflection, authenticity, and a tailored process that empowers professionals with ADHD to thrive in the workplace. Welcome to the show today, Shell. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Shirley.
Awesome. And so as we get started today, can you give us a little of your background and how you transitioned into career coaching, specifically working with neurodivergent individuals and those with ADHD?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I like to tell people that I am a career coach and counselor first, and that's been my profession for 35 years. But I work exclusively now with neurodivergent adults. I've worked with everyone for 20 years. And then when I got my own diagnosis, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that's when I saw the need to really start honing in on working with my tribe. So this has been the work I've done for many, many, many years. I am not an I always tell people, I am not an ADHD coach. So my expertise in ADHD or neurodiversity in general is not as great or specific as some of the experts that are out there who have very specific training in this. Mine is my own personal experience and also working as a vocational rehabilitation counselor with people with disabilities for many years. So I've worked with people in our community for a long time, but not exclusively. So my work is very exclusive now. So if you want to know about ADHD in general, you can ask me about my own personal experience, but not the expert in.
And since you did mention that you have a diagnosis as well, can you talk to us a bit about your personal experience with ADHD and how it shapes your approach in coaching others?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I was diagnosed in my 50s, very late in life. I'm a late bloomer. Even then, for many years, I knew, as many of us do, that there was something off. I couldn't put my finger on it. I was having trouble understanding my neurotypical friends and family. The only people that are neurodivergent now in my world are my family for the most part. Almost all of them are. My friends, no. So when I took on my work as an entrepreneur, so I started a company called Kids Art that I did. It was one of those mornings I woke up and said, this needs to happen. It was a mission. I call it a mission. And I spent many years working with neurotypical people in general. I wouldn't have called it that. I wouldn't have described it that way, but that was basically the gist of it, right? And for many years, we were very successful. And I was a CEO founder of the company. So I literally created the whole beginnings of it. And many people who are neurodivergent, we start companies, we're creative, we're the creators, the founders. We love doing that piece of it because of the way our brains work. But then it comes to the day-to-day, right? And then the day-to-day, all of a sudden I realized that I had been a career person all the way up until the point when I started this company. I was no longer doing work I enjoyed. I was being challenged by my coworkers. The franchisees I was working with, we didn't really understand each other that well. I wasn't the best at doing that. I was an undiagnosed CEO. And if anybody who is listening to this who has ADHD has ever worked with an undiagnosed manager, somebody as a supervisor, they'll be able to tell you how awful it can be because we don't really get what's going on, right? We don't get why people won't respond to us a certain way, or why when we ask them to do something, we forgot to ask them about what are their deadlines or what is it that they need. We just forget because we're so distracted and we just want to get things done. And so I had a lot of problems leading up to when I left the company. And it wasn't a fun ending for me, but it was enough to traumatize me enough to get the diagnosis. That's when I got my diagnosis. And I always tell the story of 2 years before that I had a friend who was a therapist who sent me a book on ADHD, and I promptly put it in the drawer and hid from it until everything broke down with the franchise system. And that was when I literally went crawling to the bookshelf, put my hands on it, opened up the pages, and saw myself. It was the first time I actually recognized that I wasn't crazy, right? So many of us, before our diagnosis as adults, like if we haven't been diagnosed as kids, we can experience all the, horrors of living with ADHD undiagnosed and not understanding why people are not responding a certain way or why we really dislike our jobs and can't seem to figure out what's wrong with us in the workplace. And I'll talk more about that whole thing in terms of the work I do. But this was my story. Everything I like to tell people, everything that I've been through has been 100 times over compared to the people I work with. So there's nothing they've done that I haven't experienced as well. Once I got my diagnosis, the clouds parted. I went back to doing this work. That's when I targeted working with our community because I saw the need. I mean, it was great. And they needed somebody like me who understood what it was like in the workplace to deal with all these issues and not be able to explain it or break it down or, there's so many awful things that happen to people who were in the wrong job with ADHD. And anybody, again, listening to this is going to say, oh, yeah, I've been there, right? It's not fun, and it can cause all kinds of problems. And it did, as it did for me. So
Gotcha.
again, once I got back to doing the work I love, doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing, I was able to just blossom even more. And really, that's when I created the course book, and I really started having fun with the people I was working with because I love working with our tribe. We call it a tribe. We're a tribe, a community.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your personal story. I've worked with others who have been diagnosed with ADHD, and some of the things that you mentioned are, just some challenges that many people face. Can you talk a bit about how those challenges present differently? Careers and career coaching, period, can be a challenge, but how are those challenges different in someone who has been diagnosed with ADHD?
Well, for one thing, I mean, I can keep it really simple for you. And that is if you're not in the right job, you're going to have experience all of those issues. And so I always tell people it's not that there's anything wrong with you. It's not about who you are, what you're capable of, what you're, even the work you're doing, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just in the wrong job. It's the wrong fit for you. You haven't really gone through identifying what the right fit is up to that point. And so people get into their jobs for all kinds of reasons. They get, you've heard of people fall into it, or somebody told me about this. And because one of the things that a lot of us are great at are doing interviews, right? We can interview and get the job. So we go on these interviews, we wow them with, our personalities or whatever. Or we say something that they connect with or whatever, but it's the wrong job, right? They haven't gone into that situation with the full knowledge of what it is that they're applying for, why they're applying there, whether or not the tasks that they will be doing are the right tasks, and the conditions under which they will be working are the right conditions. So there's so many pieces of it too that are very rarely explored beforehand, that it can make it easy to get into the wrong job and then end up job hopping or quitting or being fired or being put on the PIP programs. That is the key. Whenever I always tell people, if you were put on a PIP program right away, you were in the wrong job. Because people who are with ADHD and who are neurodivergent, when they are when it's the right fit, they don't get put in these programs. They're usually better than everyone else. They're usually not only to get the job done, but get it done better, quicker, in a more productive kind of way. So critical. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
I do. As you begin to work with clients, you did mention that you created a program. Can you talk a bit more with us about what that program looks like and really how it's different than any other career coaching? I've done a little bit of career coaching, and it seemed to be a ton of assessments, a ton of quizzes, and asking lots of questions. And at times, I'll be honest, it was a little boring. So what makes your system and your program different than those?
Well, for one thing, if you know our brains, we need to be engaged.
Mm-hmm.
We need to go through a self-evaluation, we need to do a deep dive into who we are, what we want, why we want it, and to be able to articulate what those things are and under what conditions, right? And the assessments, I am not anti-assessment, but kind of, I don't do assessments for that very reason. And very often, the questions they ask in those assessments are the wrong questions for us. They don't get to the right answers. And they're compared with people who answered questions who are not always neurodivergent. So they're not going to get the right information from that. And if there's no way to follow up with that or really move it to the next place in terms of exploration with the person, then, and it's got to be somebody who really knows how to do that. And that's when, so I avoid all that and I do the deep dive, which means that the work that I do involves looking at every element that makes up one's ideal work and breaking it down into in a very personal way. And people have to be authentic when they're answering the questions. It's not comparing you to other people. It's you really just saying, this works for me. This doesn't work for me. These are the skills that I need to be using. These are the people I need to be working with. These are the conditions under which I will thrive. But all of those things are a big deal. And each one of those elements are huge. And then looking at the different fields and subjects that we're attracted to. So the key word is attraction. We need to be attracted to these things that are important to us. And it's okay to say that. I think that's where neurotypical people are like, yeah, just suck it up kind of thing sometimes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work for us. You can't suck it up and we can pretend. And what happens is you will see people with ADHD who are neurodivergent pretending or masking, they call it, trying to put on a good show, to be like everyone else. Like, why? But all the time saying to themselves, I don't get why I'm not getting this, or why everyone else is, moving ahead of me, or why can they get this task done? Well, it's because you really don't like doing that task. And that you're not thriving in that. And you can pretend that you are, or you can pretend that you want to be doing that, or even that you can do that and try and figure it out. But that will break down at some point. It will always break down. And you'll start what I call leaking, like little problems that come up that then either your manager, your coworkers, a supervisor are going to start to notice.
Yeah.
and they'll ask you about, and you won't always have the answer to that question because really it's just because you hate what you're doing or you don't like it. It's as simple as that. We have to enjoy what we're doing. There has to be an element of attraction there. And I think that's true for everyone, but particularly for neurodivergent people.
Okay.
And once that happens, once you understand that concept and you start really delving into what those elements are so that you can articulate them and you can really grasp them and say yes to those things and not be afraid to stand up for yourself about that, then things will start to turn around, right? They will start to turn around, but it has to be you first recognizing what those things are so that you feel confident, and the confidence has to be there to do all that.
Okay. And taking that even a step further, what does that deep dive look like? How are you helping your clients to really explore and identify their career interests and passions?
That's the work I do. That's it. So yeah, we break it down. The two things that I have that after all the years of working in this field, I have determined are the best way for people to really move forward and get all that work done is through the 8-week Your Next Career Move masterclass that I do.
Okay.
So in that, I have 4 to 6 people. It's a very small group. They become cohorts. They become their network and support. Nobody else understands what they're doing in this process but them. I put them in what I call the career bubble, which means they can't have conversations with anyone else, even their spouses or their significant others or whatever, about what they're coming up with during this time. The only people I want them to talk to are their cohorts and me. So they get all the ability to basically explore as wide a range as possible of possibilities, right? So the different elements that we go through in that process, and in the book, by the way, we use the book that I wrote. I wrote the book to go with the class, but it also stands on its own for people who just want to get started, but they really need to be working with other people as well for accountability. But the class is a deep dive. So they get the coaching, they get the support. And the big thing that comes up, which will come up if you're working through this process on your own, is what's called the safekeeping self. And that's the part that wants to put up a fight, wants to resist and say, no, but somebody else said I should do this, or this is, so you can see why I tell them you're in the career bubble. Do you understand that? Because we got enough voices going on in our head already. We don't need more else. If you're going to start hearing your mom from when you're a kid or your friends and your family saying, why are you looking at this? You're never going to make money at this, right? But you have to be able to explore these things first and see how maybe some elements of those things can fit into what your next move is. And they always can. And it's absolutely, in fact, necessary that they be considered and not be blown off in any way. So your resistant self or safekeeping self is always going to try and get you to fit in that little box again. And I can see it a mile away. So, I can coach people out of that and call them on it. And I told them, look, you're going to get called on this. So you better be aware of that and ready to just understand that that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I'm here for.
We'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
Americans are increasingly concerned about mental health, with nearly 9 in 10 voters seeing it as a crisis. Mental Health First Aid provides crucial training to identify, understand, and respond to mental health and substance use challenges. Gain the skills and confidence to offer life-saving assistance. We offer courses for individuals, groups, and organizations of all sizes, including specialized training for veterans, law enforcement, EMS, and educators. Visit mentalhealthfirstaid.org or email hello@mentalhealthfirstaid.org to schedule your training and make a difference in your community.
Okay. And so do you work with individuals who have not been diagnosed with ADHD, those that may have some struggles with being able to focus, but have not necessarily received that diagnosis? Is your, are your books and your classes, are they just specifically for those that have been diagnosed?
Two things. Okay. The first thing is if it looks like a duck. And when people tell me I'm not diagnosed, but I really think I do, yes, I will definitely accept them in, because at that point, what I'll say is you need to get the diagnosis, but obviously you're having the same kind of issues come up for you, and I can help you with that. And that's what you absolutely should be doing, is going through this process. And the other thing is when they go through the process, they are going to get the support they need. So they're going to get what they need to decide, yes, I'm going to go get the diagnosis, right?
Gotcha.
But for other people who you asked about, can anyone do this essentially? This is actually better than anything out there. If I do say so myself, I've been in it for 35 years. I've got to start like patting myself on the back. And you know what? We are people pleasers and we don't like to toot our horn, but I'm learning how to do that. Okay. So yes, this is probably the best book, how to engaging process in the form of a book that literally anyone, whether or not you have ADHD, can use to go through this process. It's still the same process. It's just that I focus in the book a little bit more on what some of our specific needs are as neurodivergent individuals. But yes, absolutely, this can be applied to virtually anyone out there. And those are, people who've written reviews have said that. Like, you don't have to have ADHD to go through this. And I do want to give credit where credit is due, and that is to Richard Bowles, who trained me initially in the What Color is Your Parachute method. So he was my mentor. I actually worked with him and I provided what I call parachute coaching for many, many years until I got my own diagnosis. And I could see that that book was no longer actually working for our tribe. And I had to over the years, I'm probably the only one who's ever been trained by Richard Bowles as a career person. And he's trained many who took it to that level, really took it beyond where things were at. And I always give credit to him. It's right there on the front of the book. He was my inspiration. I still use elements of that method. I have permission by his widow who runs his foundation to do it. She wanted me to do it to write the book under the same umbrella as Parachute, but the publishers were not looking for that. So I said, okay, that's fine. I'll do it on my own. And I'm really glad, because it wouldn't look anything the way it looks now. I customized it.
Nice.
That's awesome.
I
customized it a lot.
Very nice. Very nice. You've mentioned a few times that individuals with ADHD oftentimes get stuck or feel stuck in a career that's just not a good fit for them. What is your advice for them? How do they start to move out of that career phase into something that they can enjoy?
Well, I mean, everything that we've been talking about is pretty much it. You've got to start thinking about going through this process. I just don't see any way out of it. I mean, people want to take shortcuts, but I'm telling you, there's no shortcut, because your brain has to adjust as you go along to what the right elements are to be able to speak and articulate what they are, not only for yourself, but for, say, going on an interview. And maybe even if you're looking at doing some kind of self-employment, knowing that, oh, I've always loved doing this. Like, you see a lot of people out there now, especially young people on TikTok, who take something that they really love doing and they make a business and make it all these followers. It's not unlike that. I mean, it's very possible, even older, to do those kinds of things. Not necessarily be a TikTok person, but find what you're attracted to and become proficient enough to do your own self-employment. And what I tell people about going into self-employment is not necessarily being an entrepreneur with the whole, I consider like what I did with kids art, starting a big company, as being more entrepreneurial versus just taking a skill or something that you really enjoy doing and doing it on your own, but never to do it by yourself. So I like to help people maybe decide what supports they need. What are the supports that you need that are, people helping you to do certain aspects of it that you don't enjoy doing so that you can focus on what you do enjoy doing.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Can you talk through a bit about what your participants experience as they work through the masterclass and what the experience is like for them?
Absolutely. So we start, like I said, it's an 8-week process. So week to week, we're covering different elements of what make one's ideal work. I use the metaphor of planets. So in each session, we're completing a different planet, which is a part of learning more about who you are and what's important to you in the work you do. And those elements or planets are transferable skills and traits, the people you prefer to work with and for, what the working conditions need to be, and we break that down a lot. In that week, we create what's called a self-accommodation plan, which means that you are like really able to identify what you need in the conditions to be able to articulate that either to an employer or to create that on your own. And then in the fourth planet is special knowledges and fields of fascination. So that's where we really look at maybe what are some of the fields that you always wanted to explore to determine, what the best avenue is for moving in a direction where you can maybe use your skills in a specific field that might be completely new or one that you had always thought about, for example, and maybe just start to get going as the next move in one of those things. But it's also creating what I call the foundation for everything that moves from there. So for me, my foundation, I always like to say, is education. So everything I do is about educating. And that means even being here, talking to your listeners. To me, that's education. I love imparting knowledge. I love teaching. I love coaching. I love supporting and inspiring and uplifting. All of those things are my foundation of the work I do. So that makes it easy for me to say whatever next move I make in my work, it's always going to have to have be relative to education. And again, I get to define what education is. So everybody has a foundation. It could, some are like technology could be a foundation, food could be a foundation, art or arts of some kind could be a foundation. It means that everything that you do is actually going to start with that foundation, like the foundation of a home. I mean, use that metaphor. You've got to have, that in order to build it, you have to have the foundation. So that's kind of where we're going with that. So that gets created, and then we begin to piece the puzzle together. So you become like your own detective in the process and start seeing the clues that keep coming up over and over again. And you tell story. We do storytelling. There's many kinds of exercises that we do. We talk about rewards. And so the fifth planet is rewards and salary. So we look at what you need to make to pay your bills to get, like if it's going to be in a whole new field. So we have to look at that piece of it and what's important to you in terms of being rewarded on the job in some way and really getting clear and honest about that. Honesty, by the way, is the key to this. And I say you can't rig this system. If you try and say that something's important to you when it's not really important to you, it's going to throw the whole thing off. It'll be a big waste of time. So that's where, again, we talk about that safekeeping piece where the whole way through that resistance is coming up. And I coach people through that. I get them when they feel stuck or blocked, I can walk them through that. And then there's a geographical piece where you actually talk about maybe where you're living now isn't the most ideal place for you to create the kind of work or path that you want to create. What would that look like? What are, some of the elements that need to be there in wherever you live? So it doesn't mean you have to move. It just means knowing that is going to really be helpful. And then the last piece is, and I think the most important piece is really identifying what your life purpose is. And that after you've done all this work, it makes it much easier to start to tackle that whole question of what am I really here for? Why am I, what is the bigger picture of my life and what I want to create and do and leave the world, right? And that becomes very, very important in terms of making career decisions, believe it or not. And people really dive into that. I kind of broke it down in a way that a lot of people have never done before. So I make it easy for you to start to create a statement. And then we look at what are the areas that are rising to the top. I call it the cream rising to the top. Like, what are those things that are sort of coming up for you as you're going through this process? It'll start to organically form some definite directions, right? You start to get that. And then you have support from other people. That really is one of the biggest pieces right there. Is like everybody gets where they hear about what's coming up for you so they can support you and give you ideas and offer, outside support as well. And so, yeah, I mean, by the end of it, you basically have like a process that you identify of your next steps. Like, where are you going now? Like, what is your plan for, do you need to take classes into something? Do you need to get work experience in a certain area? Do you need an internship? Do you need to go back to college? And if so, what specifically is that? So nothing is random. It's very, very specific, which is why it's important for kids in high school and college to do this work before they choose a major, before they decide if they're even going to college and what college they want to go to, and why that one would actually fit who they are better than, something else, and what to take. Specifically, by the time you're a junior, you're all of a sudden you're supposed to pick your major, right? And sometimes people aren't ready for that. This is the process that is so important to do before you even make that decision. And I get lots of parents who, they pay for the class for their older adult children, right?
Oh, wow.
I've had people pay a parent who paid for a 39-year-old to take because they want to see them finally get it.
Yeah.
And this is the way to finally do it. So did that answer your question?
It absolutely did. It absolutely did. And even taking it a step further, I love that there is a specific plan for after the 8-week course is over. Can you share a hallmark story or story of how one of your clients was able to transition from the 8-week course to their perfect career?
So there's different ways. Some people will actually get it while they're in the class and go, oh, I know what I want to do. And other people are still, it takes a little while for it to percolate. So for example, I had one person, very beautiful lady from Kenya, who was she was in marketing when she started, and she realized she hated marketing. She hated everything about it. And as she was going through the process, she realized she really wanted to be helping people, but it didn't really all come together and hit her like a ton of bricks until like a month after the class, when she put all the pieces together and all of a sudden she said, I need to be a coach. I am going to get coach training. And she went to the coaches organization and she got that training. And now she's like working, doing all kinds of different types of coaching, executive coaching. It's like it fits her like a glove. So that was that's an example. Sometimes it takes a month or so to really let it percolate and to connect with the people in your group, have those conversations. Or I will continue to work with people and strategize, like what some of the next steps are going to be, whether or not you should go to this type of school or this type of a program or whatever. But I always say, if you're going to go into like a certain kind of program, you've got to almost do as much work as you did in this class to figure out what the right one is, right? So they're doing research in the class. They're also, I forgot to say, they're also having conversations with people about areas that they're very curious about. maybe never had a chance to explore, and now they get to talk to people doing those things. So that's all. It's a very, very interactive, full-on program of, you don't sit around. This is not like you just come to class and that's it. You definitely have to like be prepared to go all in on it.
Okay. Nice. So, how can employers and HR departments better support individuals with ADHD in the workplace? And what should they understand about the unique challenges that people face?
Well, I think it's not always easy for a person to reveal their diagnosis, and very often it's not even a good idea because of some of the judgments that come up. But I would say as employers, if they're leaning towards it could be real simple. If they're leaning towards putting any employee on a PIP program, they should be looking at what's not getting done, and what's happening in the workplace for them that might need adjustment. It could be that if some of the tasks were shifted around to where they get to do more of what they enjoy doing, or even a lateral move of some kind, if they look at who that person is instead of just putting them in these programs and then, crushing their confidence. Because I see these people in my class, okay? Their confidence is so bad, and they feel like it's a personal thing. It really isn't a personal thing. The employer should understand that the person with ADHD, it's the wrong fit for them. And I want them to send people to my class first, and then they'll come back. Instead of the PIP program, send them to my class. They'll come back and tell them what they need. They'll come back and say, maybe I need to quit because there isn't any lateral move I can make here. Or here's some conditions maybe we can work with to make things better. But the programs that are out there now to sort of put people through the paces don't work for people with ADHD. They don't work. Yeah. When it gets to that point, I always, like I said, tell people you're in the wrong job. This isn't the right role for you. And so employers really need to sort of understand that as well, because short of having the person or knowing that the person has this diagnosis, they can see some of the behaviors or some of the things that they weren't doing right that would get them put in those programs to begin with. And maybe be aware that I think disproportionate number of people who are neurodivergent are put in those programs, and that could be the case, and maybe explore with them what conditions would work the best for them. And if either they can provide those conditions or not. And if they can't do it, then it's not the right fit. But at least a person, if they go through this process, doesn't have the crushed confidence. They have options that they're coming back with.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Where can our listeners learn more about your services, and where can they find out about your career coaching masterclass?
So 2 ways: passion2career.com.
Okay.
There are plenty of places where you click on the Calendly link and schedule an introductory call with me. And then I have to talk to everyone. I got to make sure they're a good fit for the group, right? I answer their questions at that point, and we have a really good conversation to see if this is the best move for them through the intro call. And also careercoachingwithshell.com. It's actually the same domain, it's just a different name. So whichever one you remember, Career Coaching with Shell or Passion to Career. And yeah, that's how you get in touch with me, and we'll see if that's a good fit.
Awesome. Awesome. And then I also understand that you're offering a unique opportunity for our listeners to share your ebook. Can you tell us more about this offer and how it can help others discover their best career path?
That is unlockyourcareerpath.com. It's a fillable ebook, which means you can take it on the road and do the whole thing online. You can also purchase the book on Amazon. It'll take you to the Amazon link. However, if you want to become an affiliate, you just click on the link that will take you to signing up. The idea is, do you want to share the gift of career direction, identifying your career direction once and for all, especially students, people that are in college, people that are in junior, senior year of high school. And it's also a great way to raise funds for your school as well, to share it with your students. So
very nice. I am sure that our listeners will check out your websites. I know that I saw Passion to Career earlier today, and it is a great one. So I'm hoping that our listeners will check it out. And then for anyone who is interested in checking out Shell's book, it is downloadable. It's available for you on both our show description and our website. Thank you so much for joining us on our show today. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
you too, Sharlee.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. Make sure to follow us on our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and even on YouTube at Behavioral Health Today. And if you like our show, give us 5 stars and leave us a review. That helps our show get discovered and share the valuable insights in each episode. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.